Hey everybody, so in this video I'm going to be discussing why I am so critical of the Windows 11 manual system requirements. Now I did a video like this back in 2022, however, going back and watching that video I'm not exactly impressed with how I put that video together, and I felt that it was necessary to do a retake on that. And I mean, I got this computer in here for service. It's a Inspiron, what is it? 3668. This computer is in really good condition. It's been well taken care of. The reason why it's in for service is due to performance. It doesn't have a solid state drive. It has a 1 terabyte hard drive, and back in 2018 solid state drives were still a bit more expensive than what they are now. I mean, nowadays are dirt cheap. It's like, why wouldn't you have one? But other than that, it's a pretty decent little machine. It's got 12 gigs of memory. It's got a Intel Core i5 7th gen processor. And again, this was from 2018, if I didn't mention. So he bought this brand new in 2018, and of course Windows 11 came out in 2021. Now just imagine, you buy a computer in 2018, you would expect to be able to get a decent amount of service life out of it. Now these things here, they're not the most reliable, but I mean, computers nowadays, it's not like it was back in the 1990s, where back in the early 90s you'd have, let's say, a 486, and then of course by the end of the 90s we were moving on to the Pentium 3. I mean, the Pentium 3 came out in the late 90s and 2000, and of course had the Pentium 4. Computers were improving at a very rapid pace. The difference between a computer that was built in 1995 versus the one that was built in 2005 versus the one that was built in 2015 was quite a staggering difference. But once we got to about 2010, 2012, it got to a point where you didn't necessarily need to buy a new computer every few years just to keep relevant with being able to do basic stuff like web browsing and, I don't know, just basic office productivity stuff. Things that a lot of people use our computers for. And of course, as I mentioned, the previous example, a computer made in 1995 would not do anywhere near as well at browsing the web in 2005. So you can understand what I'm coming from there. Whereas a computer that was made, for example, in 2013 can still browse the web pretty well in 2023 with some minor upgrades like a solid state drive, maybe a RAM increase. But computers that are older are still more relevant and, I guess I could say, more useful today than computers of the past. So it makes perfect sense that you would be able to upgrade to the latest version of Windows. Microsoft did this with Windows 10. When Windows 10 came out, they encouraged you, and in some cases they forced it upon you, which I think they got sued over, to upgrade your computer with Windows 7 or Windows 8 to Windows 10. And back when Windows 10 was first coming out, it was rumored that Windows 10 was regarded as the last version of Windows. Basically, someone with Microsoft was saying that Windows 10 is released and we're still working on Windows 10. And regarding Windows 10 as like the last version of Windows, because we're still working on Windows 10. But of course, in 2021, Microsoft released Windows 11. And we went from Windows 10, which again could be ran on computers, for goodness sakes, that ran Windows XP. I mean, later computers that shipped with Windows XP that were, for example, Windows Vista cable, those computers could run Windows 10. Now, of course, Windows 10 from 1507 to 22H2, big difference in what you need to have in order to run it decently well. And I've covered this in previous videos, and this is why we have computers that came with Windows 10 that ran well back in 2015, 2016, but are super slow nowadays, because the newer builds of Windows 10, they got much more intense due to the higher need for a solid state drive. But anyways, we're talking about Windows 11. So the idea was, of course, Microsoft, back when Windows 10 came out, they encouraged you to either A, go out and buy a new computer with Windows 10 pre-installed, or B, upgrade your existing Windows 7 and Windows 8 computer to Windows 10. It was a great concept. It allowed people to get the newest version of Windows while keeping their existing computer, which could run it decently well. With Windows 11, however, Microsoft pulled a 180. So this computer, let's say you buy this brand new computer back in 2018. 3 years later, you hear about Windows 11, but then you go into Windows Update and you see the dreaded message stating, this computer doesn't meet the Windows 11 Windows System requirements. You're like, but I just bought this computer 3 years ago. And in some cases, you may have paid good money for that computer 3 years ago. But yeah, it does not meet the minimum requirements of Windows 11. And that's why I call the Windows 11 system requirements the Microsoft Elite Class minimum system requirements around Windows 11. And I came up with the Elite Class name due to the simple fact that many computers like this Dell here from 2018 were getting shut out from being able to run the newer Windows. Over something as simple as, oh, the CPU is one generation too old. Seriously? You know, it's stuff like that. It's so ridiculous. Microsoft claims that Windows 11 has very strict requirements due to security, but then again, why are they more or less allowing you to install it on computers that don't meet the requirements when you do some simple workarounds or use a utility like Rufus to do the installation? It's like, okay, like what gives? I mean, the thing is, with the exception of Windows Vista, Windows versions, they were generally backwards compatible with older hardware. For example, Windows XP, you could run it on a Pentium 2, or even a first-gen Pentium. Not to say it would run very well, but you could easily run it on, let's say, a Pentium 3 and get decent performance out of it. Matter of fact, I've ran Windows XP on a Pentium 3 as my main computer back when I was in high school. So, I mean, Windows XP ran well on a lot of computers that were much older than the operating system itself. And I've ran XP on a Pentium 2 before, and it was okay. But, I mean, just for example, Windows XP would run decently well on computers that were much older than the operating system itself. Windows 7, of course, being so similar to Windows Vista, could run decently well on computers that ran Windows Vista, as well as computers from the later XP generation, like 2005, 2006, that time period. Windows 8, although many people didn't choose Windows 8 because of several reasons, but Windows 8 did in fact run well on computers dating back to the Windows 7 era. Now, of course, I think the cutoff was similar to Windows 10. You couldn't run it on systems older than, let's say, Pentium 4 Cedar Mill, if I'm not mistaken. But you could still run Windows 8 on older systems. And, of course, Windows 10, I've installed Windows 10 on a lot of older stuff, going all the way back to computers from 2006. Even computers from 2006, if you throw in a solid state drive, it would run pretty well. So Windows in the past, as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft with Windows 10, they encouraged you to either A, go and buy a new computer with Windows 10, or B, put Windows 10 on what you had. And again, with Windows 11, huge turnaround from what was previously the norm with Windows 10. And of course, by limiting Windows 11 to computers that were from, 2019, some 2018 computers, it's just ridiculous. I mean, for example, my system at Tower Lux, it doesn't meet the Elite Class requirements for Windows 11. Now, granted, the only thing it would need to meet those Elite Class requirements would be to swap in a newer Ryzen CPU, but still, it's the idea of that it's just ridiculous. I mean, this computer right here, the one I showed you earlier, this Dell, again, 2018 was when it was manufactured. He bought it in 2018. do believe it's from 2018 because I did look up the service tag on it, and the warranty expired in 2019. So, this computer, again, when it was 3 years old, it couldn't run the next version of Windows, which, in my opinion, is kind of unfathomable. Because, I mean, it's unfathomable because in the past, you could buy a computer, and chances are it would be able to you would be able to upgrade it to the next version of Windows, at least. But nowadays, with Windows 11, simply not the case. Not the case. And Microsoft, what they're doing is, of course, they're doubling down on Windows 10's in support. And see, this is the second issue. It's one thing when you can't upgrade to the next version of Windows, but of course it's another thing when you have an operating system that was quote-unquote the last version of Windows for, geez, how many years? You think about it. Windows 10 came out in 2015. Okay. Computers in 2020. If you bought a computer in 2020, 5 years after the launch of Windows 10, well, of course, the computer came with Windows 10. So, a computer you purchased in 2021, chances are it came with Windows 10. Now, those computers would meet the elite class requirements for Windows 11, generally, but, I mean, you think about it. Computers from 2018, 3 years after the release of Windows 10, they simply don't have a full decade of support. And for example, if you invest money in an expensive high-end machine like a gaming rig, for example, you would expect to be able to get a decent amount of service life out of that system. I mean, you want your investment to last, right? Or do you want to have to throw it away and replace it? Oh, because it doesn't have TPM 2.0 or it doesn't have a supported CPU. This is why I call the system requirements the elite class system requirements. And it's not because the elite class nickname I have doesn't have anything to do with how powerful the computer is. It's a simple fact of, oh, that computer does not have, for example, that computer does not meet the requirements. It doesn't meet the requirements because, oh, the CPU is one generation too old, like this Dell here. 7th gen Intel Core, whereas Windows 11 requires 8th gen. So, I'm always the kind of person who wants to be able to get the most out of a computer system, even though, for example, these Dell machines here, I don't much like them. They're a pain to service because they use proprietary parts. However, provided the thing works, I want the customer to be happy with it. And it's not fair to the customer who buys a machine like this to say, like, well, I'm sorry your computer does not meet the requirements of Windows 11. I know your computer's not that old, but I'm sorry. No, absolutely not. It's ridiculous. And that's why I'm to the point now where here it is, almost 2024. We're in December 2023. We have just under 2 years of support left for Windows 10. Okay. Windows 11 23H2 support ends roughly a month and change after support ends for Windows 10. So it's like, why should I not offer Windows 11 to customers of computers that don't meet the Microsoft Elite Class requirements for Windows 11? It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, in my opinion. And, I mean, like I say, it's just ridiculous. And that's why I call those requirements the Elite Class System requirements. It's because the Windows 11 system requirements, they don't factor in what you really need to run the OS. They factor in what Microsoft wants you to have for security reasons. And let me ask you this. When it gets, let's say, 2027, do you think it's going to matter more that the computer doesn't have TPM 2.0 or doesn't have a supported CPU, quote-unquote supported CPU, when you may have millions of computers running an unsupported version of Windows? Now, of course, Microsoft, they say, oh, we're going to offer ESUs, but honestly, who's going to pay for them? Who's going to pay for them? They're going to keep running Windows 10, or they'll use the Rufus hack or one of several different hacks to force install Windows 11 on that computer that doesn't meet the requirements. It's like Microsoft, they're trying to force retire computers that are still perfectly well usable and have lots of service life left in them. But the news is, in the end, the consumer is going to win the battle, I think, because the consumer who ultimately owns the PC, it's not Microsoft's computer, although sometimes I think Microsoft thinks it's theirs by the way they force updates on the thing, and in some cases force BIOS updates on the motherboard. But in the end, the consumer owns the computer. The consumer has the ultimate choice of whether they replace the computer or not. And obviously most people don't have the technology to install Windows 11 bypassing the requirements on the computer, don't meet the requirements, so they're going to stick with Windows 10. And at the end of the day, when it's, for example, a couple years after Windows 10 support ends, is it going to matter? Is it going to matter that much that the computers don't have TPM 2.0 or they don't have the supported CPU when they're running a Windows version that is no longer supported? I think it'll be better to have those computers running Windows 11 anyway. And as someone in a recent video I posted commented, I think this makes perfect sense. They should allow you to install Windows 11 on a computer that don't meet the requirements, but they should give you a notice saying that your computer does not meet the requirements for the latest security features, and give you the option to install anyway. Don't just outright block the installation. And it's the way they're handling this is just ridiculous. If you install Windows 11 on a computer that don't meet the requirements, and your installed feature build in support, for example, Windows 11 21H2 is already in its support, but computers running Windows 11 21H2 have not gotten any prompts to upgrade to the new feature build, all because they don't meet the requirements. It's just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Microsoft, they're going to have to get a grip on things. People are not going to throw their computers out en masse in 2025. Yes, some people probably will replace their computers. For example, if the person who owns this computer didn't realize, hey, we could upgrade this with a solid state drive for $20 or $30 and make it way faster. People are retiring computers from this age simply because, it didn't have a solid state drive. But there's going to be a lot of computers out there that are going to be running Windows 10 in 2026 and 2027 because they simply cannot upgrade to Windows 11 without the workarounds, and that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a serious problem. But anyways, that's why I call the Windows 11 system requirements the Microsoft Elite Class requirements. It's because never before have I seen something so ridiculous come from Microsoft. Previously, when a version of Windows in support, there was a viable upgrade path. For example, computers running Windows XP, at least the later ones running Windows XP, could run Windows 7. And computers that could run Windows 7, for example in 2020, could upgrade to Windows 10, maybe with a minor upgrade like a solid state drive. It's run Windows 10 pretty well. But when Windows 10 in support, theoretically they cannot upgrade to any newer version of Windows because the next version of Windows has these elite class system requirements that are artificially high, and therefore the computer simply cannot upgrade to them. Now it remains to be seen what's going to happen in the future. It's been rumored that Microsoft might make those requirements hard requirements, therefore you won't be able to use third-party workarounds to install Windows 11 on computers that don't meet the requirements. However, I do think that that's probably not going to happen because it was rumored to happen with 23H2, yet you can install 23H2 the same way you can install 21H2 and the same way you can install 22H2 using Rufus or other workarounds. So yeah, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with Windows 12 as well. That'd be interesting to see. But yes, the Microsoft Elite Class Windows System requirements. That's my nickname for the Windows 11 requirements in hopefully you have an idea of why I come up with that nickname. It doesn't have to do with the performance of the computer. I mean, heck, computers in 2018, like this machine here, can run circles in performance around some of these cheap laptops you can find at Walmart that come with Windows 11. So, anyways, that runs out for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video from Cuckoo Channel. If this is your first time, please subscribe to the channel and be sure to tick the bell so we get notified of new video posts. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, and share this video as well as the channel with your friends and get the word out. Also, I have a second channel, that's CubeCompMTDX. Over there you'll find videos about thunderstorms and weather, cycling, and videos about me personally. Feel free to subscribe over there as well if you like. Again, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for your support.